Welcome to our somewhat monthly citizen science lecture. This is St. Andrew Bay Resource Management Association, or as we like to call ourselves, Baywatch's presentation. We like to gather up as many people as we can and present science-based lectures on a variety of topics, and most of them are related to things that are important to people who live around the Bay, but they are a variety of topics. And this series is starting with climate change, and it's going to lead into sustainability. And Dr. Fitzhugh is going to follow up after my presentation, and we're going to have some other discussions later on in the year on and next year on sustainability. So I hope that you'll be able to come to those. My name is John Ackerman. I'm the president, recently elected, of Baywatch. And those of you who do not know our organization, we've been around since about 1988, and we've been working to protect and conserve the ecosystem surrounding St. Andrew Bay. And it's been a lot of different processes that we go through. A lot of it is involving the local scientists and scientific organizations that are stationed here, and also the local scientists who work here. My background is, I started out in, as an officer in the United States Air Force a long time ago in intercontinental ballistic missile operations. Did that for about a decade, and then I transferred into what we call in the military, professional military education, and I taught at Air Command and Staff College up at Maxwell Air Force Base. And there I taught national security studies and a variety of other courses in joint operations, leadership, and command. And during that time period, I was fortunate enough to get selected to go get a PhD, paid for by the Air Force, and I got a PhD in political science, and came back and taught, continued to teach at Air Command and Staff for a while, and also worked there. And my PhD, my dissertation topic was the international relations implications of climate change. And during that time period, there was still a lot of discussion whether or not this was a real thing or not, or was it, was it something that was going on with the climate that people didn't understand. But since then, the scientific consensus around climate change has become very, very strong. There are no major scientific organizations on the planet that disagree that humans are the primary cause of climate change and that something needs to be done about it. So it is a serious topic, and unfortunately, there's still a lot of political intrigue that goes on with it, and so that makes it difficult for people to come to a clear understanding of what it is. So tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about what climate change is and how it impacts you directly here in Bay County, and also what you can do as an individual to have a positive impact on climate change and what causes climate change, and also what you could do locally. And then we'll figure out, why am I picking on y'all in particular as people who can help with this topic. So climate change is an increase in temperature, primarily because of the trapping of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And the greenhouse gases, primarily the ones we worry about, are carbon dioxide and methane, but there's others. And the number one greenhouse gas is water vapor. Now, we don't trap water vapor, it's there, but it does influence the climate too. And these increase in temperature has enormous impacts on a variety of different features of our ecosystems that are important to our survival. And it has caused and is causing a variety of impacts. The top left-hand picture is of New Jersey during what had been a tropical storm that visited them in 2003. The wildfires you know about, you've seen the massive hurricanes we've had this year, drought in other areas, and also the melting of the ice has been quite extreme, cyclic, both on Antarctic and Arctic. But when you bring this down to our level, that increase in temperature causes melting of sea ice. It also causes thermal expansion, which increases sea level rise. So a 7-foot sea level rise here in Bay County has a huge impact on our area. The East Bay in particular, you can see that there's a lot of low-lying areas that are with a 7-foot sea rise, 7-foot storm surge, and also when you look at West Bay, another area that would be immensely impacted by a 7-foot surge in local seas. And here in the city, there's a lot of areas along the shoreline, as you can see, where the dark blue is, and where will be directly impacted. And if you see where that little circle is, that's where the marina is. And one of the discussions people have been having about what will happen with the marina, what the changes and everything. One of the things they really ought to take into consideration is sea level rise, and I'm not quite sure that that is one of their planning topics when they're discussing that. So huge impacts all around Bay County from just a 7-foot surge, and many of the typical storms that we see have much larger surges, and we just recently had a storm that had a 2 to 3 foot surge that had impacts all over the county too. But one of the topics that gets a lot less discussion, and that is happening regardless of whether you consider the rise in temperature a result of man-made influence, is ocean acidification. We are putting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And as a result of that, we're increasing the carbonic acid within the oceans. Now, what will that do to our oceans? Well, it's going to increase the acidity. Now, there's a lot of research going on out there of exactly what will it do. And in some cases, it's going to hurt the growth of corals. It's also going to impact shellfish because their shells can be dissolved by the carbonic acid increase. So what will that do? Well, there's going to be winners and losers as you change in any ecosystem, and the predictions are not exactly good for some of the dominant type of organisms that we've seen, coral reefs, for example. So ocean acidification is happening whether or not you believe climate change is occurring or not, and is something that has to be addressed because it is impacting directly our oceans, our bays, and all marine life in one way or another. So what could you do? What can you do individually to help change that, help slow that process? How many people here are familiar with David Suzuki? A few? Okay, good, good. He's been around quite a long time. He's a noted environmentalist, and he has had a number of great TV shows. If you ever get a chance, Google him up and look at all the outstanding videos that he does, all the presentations he does. He's a world-renowned scientist and environmentalist. He came up with a list. Now, as you're looking at these lists, and there's going to be more, kind of see if there's some commonalities within the lists. Is there some trends, or is there some dominant themes that you see? And each of these, most everybody out here could do them probably, and they're not going to have a giant impact on your life. Anybody familiar with the National Resources Defense Council? NRDC, okay. A very aggressive organization that has used litigation to help enforce a lot of our environmental laws that in the past have not been enforced. They are very good at what they do, but they also are interested in what you do, and so they've come up with a list. Anything on there that's kind of unusual to you? You haven't seen before? If you're interested in climate change, you probably have gone out and tried to figure out, what can I do? How can I help? A lot of these are pretty common. And this one comes from a little bit different source, one that you may not expect. Forbes Magazine, big business, big conglomerate corporation out there. They're concerned too. Most large multinational and international and local corporations are very concerned about climate change because it can impact the way they do business. And one thing businesses don't like is uncertainty. So they would like to figure out, well, what are we going to do about this carbon dioxide that's impacting our atmosphere? What can people do? And they've come up with their list. Any themes appearing in there? Any common topics, common actions that you can take? Food, transportation, energy, things like that? Eat less meat. Why would they want you to eat less meat? What is one of the common products of a large cow? Methane gas. Yep. Cattle are renowned for their ability, because of the grass they eat, to produce large quantities of methane. What's wrong with methane? What is the chemical formula for methane? CH4. What is that other bad greenhouse gas? CO2. Okay, so you got one CH4, you got one CO2, so you got more of those chemicals that block the atmosphere, block the heat that comes from the sun from leaving. And in fact, methane's worse. It's 25 times more powerful than CO2 at blocking radiation from the sun. Yes, sir?
Well, I was thinking one comment. It seems in general be more efficient, less waste, be more efficient in all different areas, not waste, and reuse whenever possible. That seems to be the theme that I see with all of those.
Okay. So we're seeing some common things there. One is the food, one is being more efficient, reusing things, because if you reuse things, you're not going to have to input all that energy that you had in the past to make it. And most of our energy comes from fossil fuels right now. And fossil fuels obviously give off a lot of CO2. Okay?
What do you mean by vote with your feet?
Vote with your feet. And this is something that Americans kind of have trouble with, but you can walk back and forth to work if you live near where you work. If you live in Europe, that might be a little bit easier because a lot of the smaller towns and villages, everything's nice and compact. And this will become important a little bit later when we talk about another part of it. Yes, sir?
I was just thinking, some communities, like, because they weren't planned that way, it's more difficult to vote with your feet. But I've seen cases where you see people in the parking lot move from one end of the parking lot
in their cars.
And unless you are handicapped, it's better for you to walk.
Yeah. So there are many opportunities. A building like this in particular has some unique opportunities because lots of stairs. So if you're interested in getting fit and also, kind of contributing to reducing carbon dioxide, work out, walk around. Campus is pretty. Don't drive your car from place to place. Okay, does that make sense? Vote with your feet. Okay. An interesting website, ThoughtCo. They went through a variety of processes to kind of think of some ideas on how to reduce people's impact on the climate. And some of these are just common sense. Anybody gotten a report card from your utility? They'll come out for free. They will run around your house and they'll find out where you have leaks, where your air conditioning is leaking outside, also where your heat might be coming outside also. They do a variety of different types of tests to see how many watts you're using and how efficient your systems are that you currently have. And then they'll recommend to you, hey, you could probably replace this system with another system that uses a lot less electricity, or we could do this, we can insulate, weatherize your property. And they do a lot of those things for free. And some of the upgrades that they'll offer you are very inexpensive also. So again, a lot of energy focus, a lot of, yes ma'am.
I did, we were just talking about, when they came out, what I found, and I didn't even know this, that if you have something plugged in, but you're not using it, I mean, I guess I knew it, I just wasn't
Didn't think about it.
thinking about it.
You know what they call those, right? Energy vampires.
Yeah, just
because they're running all night long. You know, they may have a light on, they may not have a light on. Your VCRs, your television set. If you turn it off, it's still working, and it's still sucking in electricity. So, well, how do you fix that? How do you prevent that?
In my kitchen, coffee maker, everything is unplugged until I need to use it. Same with the bedroom, and I've gotten my son on that plan, and I really was wondering how much. I would say, they said you could save as much as 45%.
Wow, that's pretty
depending
pretty
on
good.
your house.
Yep.
But I really do save about $25 to $30 a month.
That's impressive.
And
makes a difference. It does.
Change.
Yeah.
If you actually go and unplug everything.
Get one of those surge arresters that have multiple outlets, and it has one switch. You plug multiple things into it, and then at night you just turn one thing off, and you've turned off your VCR, you've turned off your box for your television company, you've turned off the TV. So simple way, and also then you now have a surge arrestor to kind of give you some protection from lightning, which we happen to see a little bit around here. Okay, so some of these things are simple. Shorter showers. Yeah, it's also good for your skin. So, okay, so we're seeing a lot of those energy things, and a lot of transportation things, a lot of food things. Okay, less meat, more vegan type things, use less cars, automobiles, trains, things like that. So this kind of blends into how us, our community, how we can influence our decision makers. What can you do to talk to the people who manage, who run your particular area in the county? What can you do to influence them to make our communities more resilient for climate change? Anything on there that you haven't seen before or you're not familiar with? Yes, ma'am?
I'm just curious, how much carbon or greenhouse gas is emitted from the burning of our garbage? I've had people say to me, why bother with recycling? We're saving money on, I guess,
How much is emitted from cars or
from burning our trash.
Oh, burning our trash.
Generator.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's one of the main byproducts, along with another nasty product called dioxin. A lot of the plastics that are made that are burned into the incinerator, the residue is highly contaminated with dioxin, which is one of the most dangerous carcinogens there are. So, sir? Mercury, and depending upon what the product is, mercury can be emitted and things like that. One of the byproducts of our coal-fired plant over here is the Smith plant is mercury, along with massive amounts of carbon dioxide. Now, good thing about natural gas, if we switch over to natural gas, it emits less carbon dioxide, but still a problem. And so there's a new company coming, and they're called 30A Recycling, and they will take your plastic, your cardboard, your glass, your metal, and they will recycle it, not burn it. Something to think about. They're on the web. Yes, ma'am?
It's only $12 a month.
$12 a month. They'll come pick it up at your house, and they don't burn it. Something to think about.
They service the beach.
Okay. Highly recommended. So pressure from us can change the zoning. Pressure from us can force our lawmakers to think about green ways to build. Pressure from us can also have them not just go into a new forested area, but take an area that probably could use some construction, could use some new development, and start there instead of wiping out trees and plants. We've got some open spaces that could be developed, but they won't do it unless there's pressure. And that leads us to planning a process that they know about, they understand, and they know the components, but they don't talk enough about, they don't apply them enough because they don't get the pressure from us to do that, smart growth. And it's being utilized all around the United States. There are communities that are working very carefully to incorporate this. And a lot of it you see already in Europe where you have village-style developments where within your particular area you have a small store, you have a small pharmacy, you have a small doctor's office, a dentist's office, you have everything within walking distance. And therefore you don't have to drive, you can simply just walk down to the grocery store, the bakery, and pick up what you need. And that can be done here. But, these things have to be discussed with them. It has to be built in. We have a new subdivision apartment complex going in right across Hathaway Bridge. All houses. And I was thinking to myself, why do you have just nothing but houses? Why isn't there some retail right in the middle of it instead of farther away? Why isn't there a store? Why isn't there a doctor's office? Why isn't there opportunities for other type of retail right there where 1,000 people are going to live? Because they didn't do smart growth planning. There's going to be a retail component. Do you think it will be the type of stores that will maximize the opportunities for people to walk to and things like that? Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But that's the kind of thing we need to emphasize to our elected officials. Any of these strike a nerve? Any of these ideas up here stand out to you? I'm drugged to that transportation because I live in Panama City Beach, and I always think about Front Beach Road. I'm going to myself, what could we do to make Front Beach Road something that people would want to be on during the summertime instead of avoid during the summertime, except for the tourists? Sir?
Free shuttles.
Free shuttle, up and down. Yep. You imagine if that was the requirement, you came to your hotel, you park your car, and you get the tokens for the free shuttle that take you, it goes up and down every 10 minutes, and you don't have to worry about it. It's air conditioned, it's powered by electricity instead of gas or even natural gas. Could be done. Yes, ma'am?
Kansas City, they have something, and they use it to go between bars, but it can go down Front Beach and it can go
Yeah.
down Thomas.
Yeah.
And it's like a big, you have somebody who's steering it in front, and everybody on there has to pedal, like the right and
Yeah.
right, and it goes up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
They got the blue line and the red line.
Yeah. You know, more bicycles even.
Yeah,
You know, you see bicycles on 38 and you don't see the scooters, and they don't seem to have that problem. No offense to the scooter owners, but you're not helping the situation with those scooters. Why don't you just sell your scooters and get bicycles? Now, everybody will get healthier, the air will get cleaner, there'll be less traffic. All right, why am I picking on you people? Why are you people the guiltiest? You may not feel guilty, but you are.
We're the biggest consumers of.
Oh, because you, us, me included, we use a lot of energy. We use an enormous amount of energy. And you know, from the statistics up there, it's gigantic, the numbers we use. Just our little 5% of the population, 25% of all the world's energy. So if I can get you to do some of those things, you're the equivalent of 307 Tanzanians stopping doing bad things to the climate. That's a pretty good bang for the buck if I can get y'all to do something to help with the climate. So that's why when people get all upset because the Chinese are not part of this or the Indians are not part of this, it's because they get more bang for the buck by getting the Americans to join, getting us to contribute, getting us to do things. We can have a huge impact because we are gigantic consumers. Yes, sir?
I was going to bring up a point with the Chinese. One of the big concerns of the Chinese is they developed their economy.
Mm-hmm.
If they continue, or if they had continued on our path,
Right.
our methods, they would definitely become more and more of an issue.
Yeah.
There's actually a businessman I met, Hank Paulson, who was CEO of.
He was the Treasury Secretary, Hank Paulson.
Treasury Secretary, and what he's been working on is mainly after he's kind of retired and now working on the issue of climate change, and much of his work has been working with businesses in China as they develop to try to steer them towards greener development so they don't go down our same path, they go down a more conservation-minded path. And it appears to be working. I mean, it appears that they are making some advances there, and they are going down a more conservation. It's kind of like with these underdeveloped countries, you can't tell them they can't have these things. You got to tell them, these, like indoor plumbing and water and a lot of the advantages we have. We just have to figure out ways they can have them and be very energy conservation and allow them to raise their standard of living without being peaceful. And and some of the way we did it is because we were, especially in the beginning.
Yeah. We were ignorant of the side effects and the consequences. But China, leaping ahead. Their amount of energy that they will utilize using wind will be the largest in the world. We're not far behind. They're putting more solar panels up than any other country. And they are rapidly utilizing as much renewable energy as they could. And 5 years ago, they were going to open, it was estimated, 5 coal-fired plants a week. Now that's slowed down dramatically. Australia is, in tears because the Chinese are not going to buy as much coal from them, but that's a great thing. But so the Chinese are working on it. The Indians have made huge promises to put solar panels on 1 billion people's houses. Imagine that number, 1 billion people. That's hard for us to imagine, but they're moving rapidly. The Europeans are doing some amazing things. The Dutch and the Scots just opened a wind farm off the coast of Scotland. The turbines are enormous. 20 of them will provide the energy for 20,000 homes in Scotland. 20 turbines. They float, and they're huge, and they're just amazing. The technology is here. We're just about to open our first wind farm off the coast of the United States, and they've had wind farms off their coast for a long time. The potential for offshore wind energy could power our country easily, and you would never see them because they'd be 20 miles offshore. That's where the best wind is. Yes, ma'am.
When it comes to the ocean and like Japan, for example, with them being a whaling country and they're wiping out a lot of the fish.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So much of the fish in the world bleeding in that area.
Yeah.
And they're unapologetic about it.
That's part of the, when you look at these different graphs, what you don't see, number 5, it takes 5 Earths to replace what we consume here in the United States in a year. It takes 2 Earths to replace what the Chinese consume in a year. So this is our ecological deficit. This is what we are taking out of nature more than nature can replace. And as a result, as the lady was talking about, our major fisheries, many of them are on the verge of collapse. We used to have a gigantic cod fishery off the coast of the eastern part of the United States. The stories about the fishermen that you could walk on the cod, they were so thick. They just caught them and caught them and caught them, and finally it collapsed, and it's not really recovered. Yes, sir?
And that last part, especially in the United States, the recent 10 or 15 years, they've had very strict restrictions on fishing out there, so they're basically not catching these fish, and they fully have been planning according to things. If we had a steady state, if things were like they were before, it should be recovered by now. Something has changed, and especially with codfish. Codfish is a cold water species, so that kind of gives you a clue. Probably is the problem. Why they're not recovering is because we've changed the temperature.
And we're moving down the food chain, and there's a big discussion with the fisheries about how many menhaden can we catch. Y'all familiar with what a menhaden is? That's what the cod eat.
Well, actually, no, it's more stripers and bluefish. Pogies don't usually get up. They're more mid-Atlantic, southern fish.
But that's all of those bigger fish eat the menhaden down here.
Things like stripers, bluefish,
Yeah.
white mackerel.
A lot of things we like.
They like pogies.
They're arguing over how many thousands of tons, millions of tons they can catch of that. What do they do with menhaden? They make cat food out of it.
And fish food.
And fish food for aquaculture. So, there are alternative ways. Aquaculture is one way. There are other ways to sustainably, create these things, fisheries that make them so that they aren't depleted so quickly. But, it takes willpower and it takes knowledge to understand exactly what is happening. When you compare us to the other nations there, it's not good. And
What's going on in the Pacific Northwest with the salmon
yeah.
and the orcas, both transient
Yeah.
and resident orcas that are dying.
Yeah, a lot of the whale populations are suffering because the species that they rely upon have been decimated.
And
they're moving down the food chain, and they're consuming things that they don't normally consume. Sea lions, for example, in some areas have been diminished because the orcas have turned more to them and are relying upon them for food.
A little background on sea lions and sand. I actually was a sea rancher out there for about 7 years. And one of the things that always happens with salmon, salmon is a very cyclic species. And typically what we've had is these 30-year regimes dominated by La Nina and 30 years dominated by El Nino. El Nino results in warmer water temperatures, of course, salmon conditions. La Nina usually means good news for salmon. And what we're seeing is this cycle seems to be starting to fall apart, and we're shifting to more years of La Nina. El Nino. And with El Nino, you get warm water. One of the things that happens with warm water is you get a different assortment of plankton. And the plankton, warm water plankton, does not have the oil reserves in the fat. The nutrient is not as nutrient rich as the cold water plankton. And that's why we're 3 years in a row we've had very bad salmon seasons. Basically, the salmon, in fact, we've done a pretty good job starting to restore some of the rivers and getting access so the salmon can get up and breed. But if they come out to the ocean and there's no food for those smolts, it's just not going to work. And with salmon, it's one species with warming temperatures, it's going to move them further north. And not only the bears determine on it, the forests of the Northwest require those nutrients. Those nutrients, because they die, they go out in massive numbers, they die up in these upper streams. The bears and the wolves drag them out into the forest. They become fertilizer for the forest, so they're a nutrient source for that whole British Columbia, Alaska, Northwest. And what's going to happen, probably, I would guess, is we're seeing the most problems in California, and then Oregon, and then you can see it kind of moving up as things move farther north. Which is going to, like Oregon this year.
Change in temperature changes the currents. The change in currents changes the distribution of different species, and all of a sudden, things have to adapt. And sometimes it's difficult for these species to adapt. They don't adapt quickly, and then the species declines. Okay. So you see here that we're one of those countries that are using a dramatic amount of our resources. Our biocapacity is being exceeded. Just to the north of us, our Canadian brothers and sisters are doing better. Now, population is part of it, plus it's also a lot to do with lifestyles and things like that. But when you look at this map, there's also a lot of opportunities to help with it, because these nations that are using a lot of the resources can reduce. We're way exceeding what's necessary. So there's a lot of things you can do, and starting locally and individually, you can make a huge contribution because you're an American, because you're part of that group that consumes a lot, and you can make a big difference. So that's a positive thing, that you can take the place of 207 Tanzanians, and make things better here. But what we ask, what we want is you to become active. And organizations, whatever makes you happy, whatever organization you think you could contribute to. Yes, sir?
I'm just thinking of something else that you think what you can do. But I'm thinking in my mind is be a trendsetter. That's an important thing. You know how you always have these adapters, the early adapters? Mm-hmm. If you become an early adapter, quite often people join you. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a big key. Yeah. Next thing you know, everybody's thinking about, I'm going to walk more, get more exercise, or I'm going to cut back on this. Or when they start planning a new community, let's make this a smart growth community. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's a key. Being a trendsetter could be the thing in this case.
Be the first in your neighborhood to have solar panels.
It's supposed to be a trendsetter to be the one that consumes the most.
Yes, sir.
So you made excellent points about what individuals can do, but a lot of things are just best done by the nation as a whole.
True.
So, our two biggest sources of greenhouse gases are electricity generation and motor vehicles.
Yep.
And utilities, they're going to switch from coal to solar or wind based on prices and based on regulation. And automobile manufacturers are going to switch from low mileage vehicles to high mileage vehicles, electric vehicles, based on consumer demand, but also on regulation. We had great fuel efficiency standards that were ramping up, that the current administration is trying to turn back the clock on those. You know, it's the people we vote for that vote to either keep these improvements in place or roll them back.
You bet, you bet. One of the good things, though, is that there are some trendsetters. The Chinese, for example, have promised to ban the combustion engine by 2030, all electric in China. The Europeans are pushing that way. There's several European capitals right now.
We had it here in this country. We had fuel efficiency standards ramping up to, they would be 50 miles per gallon by, I think, 2030. I can't remember the details.
But what's the one good thing? Where did you see those at? What state?
California.
Well, yeah. I mean,
And who's fighting the regulations that are coming from DC?
Those were federal, when GM and Chrysler needed that bailout, it was this grand bargain that they would sign on to the federal vehicle fuel efficiency.
And California is holding those, Jerry Brown is holding them to those standards. So,
The California rule for them.
and that's what somebody said, 6th or 8th largest economy in the world. Yes, ma'am?
I just read that by 2025, I believe it is, that General Motors, Chevrolet, every vehicle they have in there is gonna be electric.
Volvo by 2020. Yep, so the large car makers see the writing on the wall. They know that there has to be more electric choices. And, you know, that's pressure. That's pressure on the lawmakers. You know, whether they get it from the White House or not, these companies are seeing that pressure already. And then when we make those decisions to go out and buy a new vehicle, we should make those choices based on, well, let's reduce our carbon footprint, let's reduce our ecological footprint. And that puts more pressure on the car makers. Yes, ma'am?
I think we need to put pressure on not just the choices that we can make, but access to those choices. Because I know there are people that would like to get, I would like to get the car that would, you know, be best. I think we don't look at people's incomes enough. And, you know, even with food, for example, and eating healthier and eating organic is expensive. And so we need to demand and put more pressure in those areas.
You bet. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you know, if it's done right, you know, if it's made profitable for the supermarkets to carry organic, and the organic is the most popular products, the prices will go down. Right behind you.
No, we can also make our own garden and things we use the most. I know that takes time and it's a big effort to do that, but that is a good way to get organic from your own
Oh yeah.
house.
You can grow a lot of things in your house or in your yard. You'd be surprised how many things you can grow. And it doesn't take a large investment to make a small potted area, a small blocked-in area, and buy some potting soil.
I only do that with spices, but I want to do it with more things.
With other things, yeah. Yeah, it can happen. You can do it. Yes, sir?
I was just thinking, the other thing with these, I think, going back to what Chris is trying to somehow make it easier and economical to do the right thing.
Yep.
So it's instead of having to fight it, like right now. You know,
All right,
I'm recycling
here's a question for you.
my recycling, make it so it's much easier for them.
Should we tax the bad thing and make it easier to do the good thing? Or how do we?
Give incentives for doing the good thing.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be right with you just a second.
One of the other incentives would be making it safer to do the good thing.
As in?
Like bicycling or walking in Panama City.
No doubt about it.
Sidewalks.
Yep.
In a lot of places. And especially if you have small children, taking them on a bicycle is not safe because we don't have bike lanes.
Yep.
So,
And the people who can show us the way live in Amsterdam and in Denmark. They've already figured that out, how to make those bike paths super efficient, super effective, and safe. Yes, ma'am.
So I think it's very interesting to look at the USA, all of us united, but I think to make a difference in our community, we have to start here.
Mhm.
I think it'd be interesting to compare, for example, Bay County to Leon County has single stream recycling. They now pick up your compost. They have community gardens. And I mean, there's some things that are quite different, one community, one county. versus-
But they're not, it's not like they have a patent on it, you know, that those type of ideas can spread, they can, it's our leadership.
Maybe it comes back to the elected officials.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the questions you have to ask your elected official. Would you support a community garden? What will you do for bicycle paths? You know, what are your ideas about recycling?
And more than one community garden, absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Talking about that, I had an uncle, he likes to do a lot of gardening in his, like, he has a balcony. And his condominiums, they told him he cannot have more than 5 plants in his balcony.
Yeah. And those are organizations that you can go, you know, you find out that a little bad publicity for some of them organizations, you know, can shine a light on them, and all of a sudden it'll be, oh, well, maybe we can change that rule. So when they're operating in the dark, they can be quite rigid and cruel when it's accomplishing their goals. But when a little bit of publicity shines on them, they sometimes change. Questions?
We've talked about acidification affecting sea life.
Right.
Florida's made out of limestone, and that's saltwater intrusion.
Yeah. Yeah. What does carbonic acid do to limestone? It dissolves it. You know, and our limestone base, if the water becomes more acidic, and also the problem of sea level rise, more saltwater intrusion into those aquifers that we have all of our fresh water. And then if the limestone starts to collapse, we get more. So, you know, here in Florida, it's a serious issue for us. If, you know, we continue to withdraw that water, that fresh water, so the salt water continues to rise. You know, I've got some terrific pictures of South Florida that is now a giant bay, you know, because it's so low. South Florida is extraordinarily threatened by sea level rise. You know, we have some sections here up in the Panhandle, but all the way from the Everglades all the way to the Okeechobee, a 3-meter rise, and it's underwater. So they're worried. Any other questions, comments? All right, I want to turn it over to our next contestant.
I just wanted to say a lot of the things that you guys are talking about, we are going to highlight during this sustainability series. So I'm going to be talking about solar energy for dummies because I'm one of the dummies that doesn't know enough about solar energy. So I figure let's just try to break it down, make it real simple, and we'll talk about, I'm going to try to highlight what some homeowners have done to put photovoltaics on their house. And okay, so how can we do it? So we're going to do that in November. In January, we're going to have folks come out and talk about native plants, because putting native plants in your yard really will help you reduce a lot of your water use if you are watering lawns and stuff like that, because you're basically going to decrease your lawn, but also it's going to increase habitat, and actually growing lots of plants, like planting trees, helps reduce CO2. And then we'll talk about home gardening in February. So we had some people talking about home gardening, and so we're going to have folks coming out from the IFAS, you know, down in on 14th Street, talking about home gardening. We have people talking about shoreline resilience and stopping erosion. That'll be in March. Folks talking about smart growth. So we actually are going to come back to the community level. So we'll do a lot of stuff that individually we can do, but then we're going to come back to the community, and we are going to need to really talk about how should we be targeting our message to our elected officials, because we obviously need to start targeting this message to our elected officials. And then we'll end with some more wrap-up with Stephen's group, and we're still working on that, if that's going to be climate change or what we're going to, sustainability. It's going to be something with sustainability. This is a whole series on sustainability. And so I just want to let you know, all these things that you're talking about, we're going to, you know, delve into in some more detail, so I hope to see you back in the future. So I want to mention just a couple other things. So our program, and I want to thank John. This is an excellent program, so thank you very much. And I'm going to bring up, I want to let you know a couple things that are going on, okay?
And before she gets started, how many of you know about RMA? Yeah, the big one. Okay. Pretty good show of hands. Okay. If you have any questions or anything, or if you're unfamiliar with us, feel free to come talk to us after the presentation. We would be glad to explain to you, what we're about, and we need your help. We always need more new blood.
That is true. We do need more community activists or environmental activists. So RMA, the St. Andrew Bay Resource Management Association, we are in charge of 5 programs. Our Bay Watch, which is our water quality monitoring program, Turtle Watch, which looks at nesting sea turtles from May to October, excuse me. We have a seagrass monitoring and restoration, we have a shoreline restoration, and we also have a scallop restoration that we've been working with the folks down in St. Pete, the FWCC folks, since 2006, working on scallop restoration. Now, the last couple years, it's kind of fallen off because those folks have been focusing more on St. Joe Bay, but now they're coming back. They've gotten a grant as part of this, oil spill money, the NRDC grant, and they are looking for people who would like to hang scallop cages off their docks between April and December. So it is, a 9-month commitment, but really you're just going out once a month and you're cleaning the scallops. I show cleaning cages in here, but typically you don't have to really try to keep your cages super clean. But you do want to clean the scallops. You want to keep the barnacles off of them. You want to keep filamentous algae off of them. And the whole idea is that you're going to be getting scallops that are about 3 centimeters in diameter. And when I say 3 centimeters in diameter, this is how you measure the diameter is going across. And then we're hoping that they're going to be, 5-7 centimeters in diameter by the time you're ready to release them. And also we're hoping that they will reproduce, especially in November. We tend to have in this area the biggest reproduction occurring in November. That's what the data show from years and years of doing monitoring work. And so it's not difficult. If you're interested, if you have a dock and you're interested in doing this, let me know. I'll get your name and I'll send it on to Austin, I think is his name, sorry. Austin, and he will be contacting you and doing the organization, because that's his job. I'm just trying to get the word out that we're doing this scallop restoration project again. And we still have time to obviously get names, but if you know people, then let me know that as well. Oh yeah, no, if you know of people in Grand Lagoon and ask them if they're interested in doing the scallop restoration, it's actually a lot of fun. You go out once a month and then you see, oh my gosh, these scallops are getting kind of big. You're going to get 50 scallops in a cage. The cage will be a little bit bigger than the one you see in that picture because it's 2 feet by 2 feet. But everything will be provided for you. So it's not a monetary commitment, it's just a time commitment. But it's not even that much of a time commitment. And it actually is a lot of fun to be part of this. Yeah, so that'd be great to ask. So I wanted to let you know about that. And then RMA, we are a group that we rely on membership donations, and we write a lot of grants to do all this work that I talked about, the water quality monitoring, the shoreline restoration. And we are working, Sheraton Bay Point Resort, and Sharissa is with the Sheraton, and so she and I are going to be the lead folks in organizing the 3rd annual golf tournament for March 3rd, 2018, and we can't thank the Sheraton Bay Point enough for picking us as the group that they would like to support. All the money that comes from this golf tournament goes to support our programs. So, we don't just use it on something else. I mean, it's really just to support, all these environmental programs. And so we are in a 3-week push right now, between now and November 14th, which is the next Citizen Science Talk, to solicit some sponsors. So if you're interested, I'm talking about picking one place and going and talking to them. I'm not saying go to 15 places. You don't have enough time in 3 weeks to do that. So I'm looking for folks who are interested in maybe picking organization and requesting a sponsorship if that is something you feel comfortable doing. And I will talk about that more, when we're done here. But we want you to just pick a couple companies to solicit. We're going to be very targeted on what we're looking for. So we're looking for some big prizes. For instance, like a stand-up paddleboard or a kayak. That could be a prize that someone wins when their longest drive. And of course, the people that donate that, we'll give them, they'll be on the back of our t-shirt. I think I saw Stephen, you have one of our t-shirts on from Save the Bay. And, so we have, the logos go on the back of people that support us. Yeah. And you're only going to solicit the company that you've want to solicit. In other words, we don't want 3 people going to Sunjammers on Beck Avenue and disturbing them because we would like to work with Sunjammers if they'd be willing to work with us, but we don't want 3 people going, and we just want 1 person to go in and talk to them. So this is our major fundraiser. We definitely are looking for some help, so if you're interested in maybe helping us out, you can stay afterwards and we'll talk about it real quick. And if you just want to think about it, and I'll call you later this week, we'll do that too, and I'll call you and see if you'd like to help us out. So with that, this program is over with, and I'll be here to talk about the golf tournament.